They abandoned me at the hotel, unaware the reservation was in my name. That night changed everything. But before I share my story, please take a minute of your precious time to support our channel. Your support and love keeps us going. I stood in the lobby of the Azure Dunes Resort watching my own sons drift toward the elevator with their families, laughter bouncing off the marble like I wasn't even there. Kendra, my eldest son's wife, murmured something about finally being free of the extra load, and the group chuckled as the doors slid shut. They didn't know I'd heard every word. They didn't know every sweet, every meal bracelet, every towel token was sitting on a reservation guaranteed by me. Money I'd scraped together for months, selling sweet potato cobblers after church in the Saturday market, and tucking away small bills in a flour tin behind the canned tomatoes. They also didn't know what I was about to do. But this didn't start in a hotel lobby. It began 3 weeks earlier, on a bright Tuesday, when the sun poured through my kitchen window and warmed my hands around a chipped mug. I'd been a widow for a little over 3 years, and my afternoons had developed a rhythm: brew coffee, call the utility company, take a slow walk around the block. The phone rang. My eldest, Terrence, filled the line with that velvet tone he saves for favors. "Ma, I've been thinking," he said, sugar sweet. "What if we all did a proper holiday together? Like when we were little. Me and Kendra, Julius and Tasha, the kids, everybody. You too, of course." That word, together, landed in my chest like a sparrow finding a ledge. I could see the picture he painted: cousins splashing, late breakfasts, evening card games where nobody keeps score. "I found a spot by the water," he went on. "Pools, on-site restaurants, kids programs. Place looks perfect." I set the coffee pot down and blinked back a sting I hadn't expected. I had been included in plenty of dinners, mostly to cook, clear, and slip back to the kitchen while the talking happened elsewhere. An actual trip? That felt new. "That sounds lovely, baby," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "When were you thinking?" "First week of January. 7 days. He paused. "There's one tiny detail. The resort needs a single name on the reservation. Could you handle that part? We'll send you our portions right after." It's funny how a favor can sound like a compliment if you tilt your head just so. My name. My credit. My responsibility. I told myself it was fine. This was a chance to do something good, to be the glue for once instead of the help. "All right, Terrence," I said. "You can count on me." That same afternoon, I dialed the number on the Azure Dunes brochure. "Good afternoon, Azure Dunes Resort. How may I assist?" The receptionist sounded like a warm towel. "I'd like to book for 12, I said, heart thudding. I never organized anything that big in my life. She clicked and typed. "For which dates?" "January 3rd through the 10th. "Wonderful. I can offer 5 family suites, full board with activities access. The total for 7 nights comes to $5,060. To hold the reservation, we require a 40% deposit, $2,024. My breath snagged. 5,000 and change. A deposit over 2,000. My survivor's benefit was $950 a month before deductions. I'd saved more than that baking and hemming pants in summer, but not enough for the whole thing yet. "Ma'am, are you still with me?" "Yes." "Could I lock it in and make the deposit within 24 hours? We can hold it until end of day tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my father's old rocker with a notebook, listing what I had and what I could sell. $58 in cash. A small rainy day fund I swore I wouldn't touch. And my wedding ring, the slim band with a square-cut stone that caught the light the day Leonard slipped it on my finger 38 years ago. By morning, I was on the bus to McCrae Jewelers. Mr. McCrae had known my family since my boys were in high tops. "Miss Brooks," he said, peering over his glasses. "What can I do for you?" I placed the ring on the velvet pad. "What would you give me for this?" He lifted a loop to his eye and turned the band between careful fingers. "Fine clarity. Good cut. I can offer $1,050. The number punched the breath out of me. A lifetime of vows, reduced to 4 syllables, and a receipt. I stared at that little square stone and saw Terrence's eager voice, Julius's laugh, the grandbaby's feet running toward a pool. I nodded. It's a deal. Between the ring, my savings, and what I could squeeze from the jar in the pantry, I called Azure Dunes back and paid the deposit. The reservation went under my name, Laverne Brooks, with my card guaranteeing every last towel, and turned down mint. 5 suites, 12 guests, 7 nights, full board. In the weeks that followed, Terrence and Julius called often about room views, about whether the kids could try snorkeling, about whether the resort had a smoothie bar. When I mentioned payments, they hummed and promised we'd settle up later. I kept baking cobblers on weekends, pinned hemlines for neighbors in the evenings, turned my heat down 2 notches, switched from chicken to beans, and walked instead of taking the bus. All the little choices that add up when you're determined to make something beautiful happen. 3 days before departure, Terrence rang me full of holiday sunshine. Ma, you don't know how excited the kids are. Kendra's got the bags by the door. How are we looking with the rooms? Everything's set, I said. Just the remaining balance to clear. Perfect, perfect. We'll figure that out when we arrive. Main thing is we're together. The night before we left, I paid the final $3,036 with trembling fingers. My card groaned. I told it we'd make it right. I told myself the same. I rose before dawn the next morning, packed my best navy dress and the pearl strand my mother left me, and dusted my cheeks with a little powder. Terrence was supposed to collect me at 7 sharp so we could caravan with Julius to the coast. When the horn beeped, I rolled my suitcase to the curb with a smile I couldn't hide. Kendra returned my greeting without looking up from her phone. The 2 youngest grandbabies in the back gave me sleepy, "Hey, Granny VS," and I buckled in, palms warm, heart easy. I tried to start conversation. Terrence's job at the warehouse, Kendra's new business classes, swimming lessons for the kids, but the replies were thin. Kendra laughed at something on her screen and shook her head. "Funny," I asked, trying to join the moment. "Just our group chat," she said, eyes still down. "Inside jokes, you wouldn't get it." The road unspooled. Bald cypresses, small clapboard houses, fields gone gold in winter light. I watched the world pass and thought about pies and pennies and the weight of a ring no longer on my hand. Azure Dunes was prettier than the brochure, tall palms bending toward a silver strip of water, hibiscus the size of saucers, a white facade that gleamed like bleached cotton. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of citrus and salt. My granddaughter, Nevaeh, 16 and tender-eyed, ran up and wrapped me in a hug warm enough to melt the whole week's worries. "Granny V, this place is unreal. They have a movie night by the pool." "I saw, baby," I said, smoothing her curls. "We're going to make some memories." I went straight to the front desk. "Reservation for Laverne Brooks," I told the receptionist, a young black woman with braids woven like a crown. She tapped and smiled. 5 family suites, 7 nights, full board, 12 guests. "Miss Brooks, we've been expecting you." As she slid key packets toward me and recited meal times and activities, I heard low voices behind my shoulder. 5 suites. Julius whispered to Terrence. "I thought you said we were keeping it simple." "Ma handled it," Terrence murmured back. "We'll sort costs later." The receptionist handed over polished wooden fobs etched with little waves. "All suites are on the 3rd floor with ocean views. Breakfast is 6 to 10, lunch 12 to 3, dinner 6 to 10. Spa and activities are included with your wristbands." "How wonderful," I said, turning to share the moment. But the space behind me had gone quiet and empty. Terrence, Julius, Kendra, Tasha, and the littles weren't there. Only Nevaeh stood a few steps away, chewing her lip. "Where'd everybody go?" I asked her. "To the elevators," she said, voice small. "Daddy said they'd settle in and catch up later." "Without keys?" I glanced at the stack in my hand. Nevaeh didn't answer. Something flickered across her face. We walked down the corridor toward the elevators, rode up, and checked the rooms. No sign of the rest of them. The hallway felt too bright, the carpet too soft under my toes. "Baby," I said gently, "what's going on?" Nevaeh swallowed and pulled out her phone. "Granny, there's a family chat. Daddy, Uncle Julius, Aunt Kendra, Aunt Tasha. It's called Smooth Sailing Only." What kind of chat? The kind where they didn't want you here, she whispered. The floor seemed to tilt. But Terrence invited me. He asked me to set it all up. Her thumbs trembled as she scrolled and showed me the newest thread. The words cut. Clean. We're checked in. Mama handled everything like always. Perfect. Now we can actually relax without being watched. Did you see how hyped she was? Low-key embarrassing. At least it's useful. Let her do TV in her room while we do the fun stuff. The keys were suddenly heavy in my hand. The figure $2,024 flashed in my head, then $3,036, then the tidy square stone I'd left on Mr. McRae's tray. Nevaeh squeezed my elbow. Granny? You okay? No, I wasn't. But I felt something steadier than shock lifting in me, something that had nothing to do with crying in hallways or swallowing humiliation to keep peace. I drew a slow breath, found my voice, and nodded toward the suites. Come on, baby, I said. Let's put these keys somewhere safe. I have a few things to think through. Nevaeh and I slipped into my suite, 303, its balcony opening to an endless ribbon of water. The bedspread looked like folded clouds. The bathroom gleamed like a showroom. It should have felt like celebration. Instead, it felt like a stage someone else planned to perform on while I paid for the lights. Down below, I could spot them. Terrence and Julius in the pool with the little ones. Kendra and Tasha laughing under an umbrella with drinks I recognized from the menu I'd prepaid. They looked easy and unbothered, like the week was already working out exactly the way they wanted. Me invisible, my card visible. You don't have to be alone, Granny, Nevaeh said softly. I'll stay as long as you want. I kissed her forehead. You already did the bravest thing, telling me the truth. Her phone buzzed again, and she flinched. What now? They're planning, she said, eyes skimming the screen. After lunch, they want to get control of the rooms at the front desk. And Uncle Julius is asking about how disputes work with the bank. A strange stillness came over me, like the kind that settles right before a storm breaks. I poured us both water from the glass carafe and sat at the little writing desk. The pen felt natural in my hand. The plan arrived the way recipes do after years of practice. Measure, mix, set the timer, don't open the oven early. Baby, I need an hour, I told Nevaeh. Close the door, put your feet up, and text me if anything changes. I started with the bank. River City Credit, this is Ayana. How can I help you today? Good morning, baby, I said, giving my full name. This is Laverne Brooks. I need to add a protective note to my account regarding a resort transaction for $5,060 that I personally authorized. She verified me, then listened while I laid out the situation plainly. No theatrics, just facts. Certain family members may attempt to dispute charges I approved, I said. I have the reservation agreement, the payment confirmations, and a witness who can attest to my authorization. I want this documented so no one can weaponize misunderstanding. Ayana's tone tightened in that way people get when they understand something too well. I'm placing a fraud prevention memo on the account, Ms. Brooks. If anyone initiates a dispute, it will trigger a deeper review and require proof of actual fraud. I'm also emailing you a declaration form to record today's details. Fill it out, attach your documents, and reply to the secure link. Thank you, I said and meant it. Next, I called the front desk and asked for the manager. A few minutes later, a calm baritone came on the line. This is Miles Benton, guest services manager. How may I assist, Ms. Brooks? Miles, I said, I'd like to make sure our records are precise. The reservation is in my name. I've paid every cent voluntarily. I need a written statement confirming that, and I need your team to require my presence for any changes, no exceptions. Yes, ma'am, he said without hesitation. I'll draft a letter now and circulate instructions to the desk and security. Would you like to stop by my office this afternoon? Morning suits me better. 9. 9 it is, he said. We'll take good care of you. I believed him. The last call was to our old family attorney. Mr. Jenkins had handled Leonard's will, the house paperwork, and the unpleasant business when a cousin tried to borrow my signature for a temporary car note that never should have been mine. Jenkins and Wade, came the receptionist. How can we direct your call? This is Laverne Brooks for Mr. Jenkins. It's urgent. A pause, then his familiar voice. Miss Brooks, what's happened? I told him everything. The invitation, the secret chat, the plan to sideline me while using my card, the talk of disputes. He listened without interrupting, except for a low, that sounded like disapproval wrapped in sorrow. Miss Brooks, he said at last, this pattern falls under financial exploitation of an elder. It is serious. You've already done two smart things, notified the bank and flagged the hotel. I'd like to email you a sworn statement to notarize today, confirming you funded the trip freely and that any third-party disputes are unauthorized by you. They're a notary on site, you think? Most resorts keep one on call, he said. Ask the manager. Also, this is your choice. If you want to pursue protective measures beyond this week, we can discuss asset safeguards and revisions to beneficiary designations. Today, let's focus on securing the present. I thanked him and set the phone down. The ocean kept curling its white edges under the balcony, indifferent to family group chats and hurt feelings. A message pinged. Terrence. We're grabbing lunch at the beach grill. You can do room service if you're tired. See you at dinner. Once, I would have taken that as consideration. Today, it read like scheduling me off their itinerary. I typed back. Appreciate the note. I've got a full afternoon already. Enjoy. I wasn't lying. At 9 sharp, I knocked on a glass door marked Guest Services, Manager. Inside, Miles Benton stood to greet me. Dark suit, warm eyes, the kind of steadiness you notice right away. A framed photo on his shelf showed him with a partner and 2 little kids, all smiling in matching t-shirts from a fun run. Miss Brooks, he said, gesturing to a chair. I reviewed your account with our compliance lead. Here's a statement confirming payment and sole reservation ownership, signed by me, with the booking ledger attached. He slid a neatly stapled packet across the desk. And this, he added, producing a second form, is an authorization addendum granting you exclusive control over any changes during your stay. What does exclusive control allow? I asked, though I already had a suspicion. It means only you can adjust rooms, names, access, or services. We'll require you in person with ID for any modification. If you ask us to restrict access to certain suites, we'll follow your instructions. My heartbeat ticked faster, but not from fear. From clarity. If I needed to, could I deactivate access to 4 suites and retain one? Yes, ma'am, he said evenly. You are the contracting party. I read both documents line by line and signed. Miles rang the notary, Ms. Dolores Hightower, who appeared with a stamp and a smile that said she'd notarized her share of family drama. Would you like us to coordinate timing on any access changes? Miles asked gently. Yes, I said. Please deactivate access to suites 301, 302, 304, and 305 at 10 o'clock. At 11, I'd like guest services, accompanied by security, to inform those occupants that the reservation holder has modified the stay and they'll need to settle their own accommodations by noon. If anyone wants to speak to me, you can direct them to 303. Polite voices only. Miles took notes, nodding. We'll keep things respectful. If anyone raises their tone with staff, security will step in. One more thing, I said. At 12:30, could you arrange a cab for 2? Nevaeh and I have an errand. Consider it done, he said, and his smile reached his eyes this time. Back in my suite, I stepped onto the balcony with a fresh cup of coffee, the kind you sip rather than gulp. The pool sparkled. My family's laughter floated up, light as foam. My phone buzzed again, Nevaeh. They're mapping out their perfect day. Beach, then spa. Kendra said after lunch they'll handle the room situation. Julius texted. Bank dispute set to go this afternoon. All the proof I needed, arriving like clockwork. At 9:58, Miles sent a simple message. Systems ready. 2-minute countdown. I set the cup down and watched the second hand slide. 10 o'clock landed without ceremony. Somewhere below, for key cards turned into coasters. By 10:07, Tasha hurried toward the elevators, dripping pool water across the tile. At 10:12, my phone pinged. Nevaeh again. Aunt Tasha's at the desk. Her card won't work. Now, everybody's there. Daddy looks depressed. At 10:20, Terrence called, voice clipped into politeness. Ma, there's some kind of mix-up. The front desk says the reservation changed. Can you come down and clear it up? What kind of change? I asked lightly. They're saying access was adjusted. How strange, I said. You sure nobody tried to change anything without me? Silence stretched. Ma, can you just come down? I'm tied up, I said. I'm confident the manager can explain what's what. I ended the call before he could find his footing. 5 minutes later, Julius tried. Ma, they said you canceled our rooms. That can't be right. Just tell them it's a mistake. It's not a mistake, I said, voice steady as a tightrope. I exercised my rights as the contracting guest. Why? He breathed. Because I can. At 11 o'clock, a small delegation crossed the pool deck. Miles, a guest services associate, and a discreet security officer in a linen blazer. I watched them speak to my sons, watched confusion harden into disbelief, disbelief into indignation. The children looked up from their towels, wide-eyed. My heart pinched and then steadied. I hadn't done this to them. Their parents had. A hard knock rattled my door at 11:05. No courtesy taps, no pause between reps. I opened it to find Terrence, Julius, Kendra, and Tasha clustered together, faces a study in panic, pride, and fury. Behind them, my younger grandbabies clutched sand pails and wristbands, not sure where to look. Kendra spoke first, voice pitched to slice. Laverne, what is this? They're saying you canceled our rooms. Good morning, I said, stepping back so they could step in, because some conversations deserve the dignity of four walls. Ma, Terrence began, aiming for reasonable. There's been a misunderstanding. No, baby, I said softly. There's finally some understanding. I held out my phone with the screenshots Nevaeh had sent. We're checked in. Mama handled everything like always. Perfect. Now we can actually relax without being watched. Their own words stared back at them, merciless as mirrors. Julius's mouth opened, closed. It's not what it looks like. Then explain, let her do TV in her room while we do the fun stuff. Explain, get control of the rooms. Explain a bank dispute for charges I made. Silence swelled so thick you could fold it. I set the phone down. Here are your choices. The desk has already packaged your things. You can call a cab and find accommodations you pay for yourselves. That's the list. There is no second option. You can't do this to family, Tasha burst out, eyes bright with heat. I met her gaze. Sweetheart, family did this to me. Down the hall, I saw Nevaeh hover, worried. Granny, she asked, peeking in. The littles are confused. I reached for her hand. Bring them in for a hug, I said. Then we're going to make sure every adult here learns what consequences feel like. They stood in my suite like strangers in borrowed shoes. Terrence with his salesman smile twitching, Julius avoiding my eyes, Kendra and Tasha vibrating with offense instead of shame. Behind them, the little ones clutched their beach toys, sensing tension but not its roots. Ma, Terrence started, let's not blow this out of proportion. We just need the rooms back, then we can talk. Talk. I held up Nevaeh's phone. The group chat glowing bright as neon. What do you call this? Mama handled everything like always. Perfect. Now we can relax without her watching. Was that the talk? Kendra's face flushed, but her voice shot sharp. You weren't supposed to see that. And yet I did, I said evenly, along with plans to dispute the bill, along with jokes about me being an embarrassment. Julius's hands fluttered uselessly. Ma, it was just venting. Stress. You know how it is. No, I said. I don't. Because when I was stressed, I didn't create group chats to mock my children. I sold pies and rings to make their dreams real. The silence turned heavy enough to bow the walls. The kids shifted nervously, and Nevaeh stepped closer to me, chin lifted like a soldier's daughter. Here are your options, I said calmly. Your belongings are at the desk. You can get a taxi. You can book your own stay elsewhere. That's the entire list. You can't toss us out, Tasha said, tears springing more from rage than hurt. We're your family. Family isn't just blood. I said, it's respect. And you all showed me where I rank. Kendra folded her arms, defiant. Fine, play the martyr. But don't expect us to come crawling back when you're lonely. I met her glare, without flinching. I'd rather be lonely with dignity than surrounded and despised. Terrence tried one more angle, voice soft. Ma, think about the grandkids. They'll remember this. They'll remember their parents made cruel choices, I said, voice catching only slightly. And they'll remember their grandmother finally refused to be treated like a wallet with legs. In the corner, Nevaeh whispered, she's right, and the words cut deeper than any lecture. My sons looked at her, then at each other, realizing their own child had weighed them and found them wanting. A knock at the door interrupted the standoff. Miles Benton appeared with the quiet authority of a man used to storms. Miss Brooks, he said, the cab for your family is ready. Their luggage is waiting in the lobby. We can help them secure other accommodations. The kids gasped. We have to leave, one of the younger ones asked, clutching a pail like it was an anchor. My heart broke all over again, but I knelt in front of them. This isn't your fault, I said gently. Grandma loves you very much. Someday, when you're older, you'll understand why this had to happen. 8-year-old Devin hugged my neck tight. We were supposed to build sand castles. And we still will, I whispered. Someday, when people remember how to treat love right. I rose, picked up my suitcase, and looked at my sons one last time. This didn't have to be the story, but you wrote it anyway. Nevaeh rolled her own bag to the door. She didn't even glance back at her parents when she said, steady as a verdict, I'm going with Grandma. The hallway outside Suite 303 felt like a courtroom. My sons stood with their wives, red-faced and silent. My younger grandchildren clung to beach towels, wide-eyed, still unsure why the day had soured so fast. Only Nevaeh wheeled her suitcase to my side, her chin up as if she had practiced courage all her life. You can't just take her, Tasha blurted, voice sharp and desperate. She's our daughter. I looked at Nevaeh, not them. Baby, you tell them. Nevaeh straightened. I'm not being taken. I'm choosing. Grandma treated me like family when y'all treated her like a burden. The words hit like a thunderclap. Terrence looked stricken, Julius pale. Kendra opened her mouth to argue, but Nevaeh's steady stare silenced her. It's only for a few days, I added gently. After that, she can decide if she wants to return with you. No one is stealing anything. She's simply walking with the one person who didn't lie to her. At that moment, Miles appeared again, efficient but kind. Miss Brooks, your cab for 2 is waiting downstairs. The driver will help with luggage. Thank you, I said. We stepped into the elevator. As the door slid shut, I caught one last look at them. My sons, my daughters-in-law, the children who didn't yet understand. Terrence's face looked hollow, Julius's jaw clenched. Kendra's eyes burned with fury, Tasha's with betrayal. But not a single one of them said the only words that might have changed anything. I'm sorry. In the lobby, our suitcases already sat by the glass doors. The driver loaded them while Miles stood beside me. Miss Brooks, he said quietly, what you did takes more strength than most people ever find. Don't second-guess it. It's not strength, I replied, watching the palms sway outside. It's survival. Nevaeh slipped her hand into mine as we climbed into the back seat. Where are we going, Grandma? To a place that knows how to welcome us, I said. A smaller hotel down the coast. I called this morning. They've got a balcony that faces the sunrise. The cab pulled away. I glanced back through the rear window. At the resort's grand entrance, my sons and their families stood stranded with their luggage. Terrence was already on his phone, no doubt hunting another hotel. The little ones shuffled their feet, confused but obedient. For the first time in decades, the sight of my family did not chain me. It freed me. Do you regret it? Nevaeh asked softly, as the highway opened before us. I let the question sit in the hum of the tires. "No," I said at last. "The only regret I have is that it took me 64 years to put my own value first." Nevaeh leaned her head against my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Grandma." And for the first time in a very long time, I was proud of myself too. The boutique hotel we checked into that afternoon wasn't half as flashy as Azure Dunes. No towering fountains, no gleaming marble floors. Instead, it had coral-colored walls, wooden shutters that creaked in the breeze, and a courtyard strung with fairy lights that came on at dusk. To me, it felt like peace itself. Our room overlooked the shoreline. The balcony wasn't as wide, but the sunrise painted the waves gold in a way no resort brochure could capture. Nevaeh dropped her suitcase on the bed and spun in a slow circle. "This feels like home," she whispered. We spent the first evening walking along the water with our shoes in hand. Nevaeh drew pictures in the wet sand, hearts, stars, a clumsy sand castle that crumbled as soon as the tide licked it. I laughed for real, the kind of laugh I hadn't let myself have in months. Nobody was rolling their eyes. Nobody rushing me along. Just me, my granddaughter, and the sound of the ocean. Back in our room, I ordered dinner, grilled fish, rice, and sweet plantains. Nevaeh insisted we eat on the balcony. Halfway through, she said quietly, "Grandma, I don't think I'll ever forget what they did. But I'll never forget what you did either. You taught me how to stand up for myself." Her words landed softer than the surf, but deeper than any wound my children had left. I realized then that this trip, which had begun as their betrayal, was transforming into our inheritance, hers and mine, a legacy of strength instead of silence. The next morning, as the sun broke across the horizon, I brewed coffee in the small room pot and watched Nevaeh sketch in her journal. Her lines were confident, deliberate. She was capturing the waves, but also something more, the feeling of freedom. I thought about the ring I had sold, the pies I had baked, the sleepless nights I had spent calculating. All of it had been a bridge to this exact moment. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's safety net. I was Laverne Brooks' woman, grandmother, survivor, and, finally, author of my own choices. I took a deep sip of coffee, smiled at my granddaughter, and whispered to myself, "This is the real vacation." Thank you for staying with me through this journey of betrayal, strength, and self-discovery. Laverne's story is a reminder that family isn't defined by who shares your blood, but by who shares your respect. Sometimes the bravest act of love is choosing yourself. What did you think of her decision? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. If this story moved you, please give it a like, subscribe for more real-life tales of resilience and empowerment, and consider hitting the super thanks button to help me keep bringing stories like this your way. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't negotiable, and your peace is priceless.